Darcy Turner loved silence. He had a fondness for music, classical mainly, but voices were grating, rough like sandpaper on his eardrums. He hated kids even more, always screaming and yelling and running around, making noise. But his favorite sound of all was when there was a lack of thereof, a rarity to find in this day and age. As he scrolled down to the sidewalk, Darcy paused for a moment and looked around at the tricycle tipped over in a driveway. He looked up and for a moment he recognized the home. The Richardsons' family of 5, 3 kids. The youngest boy was always screaming whenever he was playing or asking for a drink of water. Not only that, but the boy had a shrill voice that pierced one's ears. The little shit also had a habit of hitting people and then running away outside to escape on his tricycle and join his friends down the street. Absolutely spoiled. It was the kind of relief, seeing the free-wheeled vehicle sitting lifeless on the cement. Darcy smiled softly, then continued through the neighborhood. The morning mist swirled around his legs, blanketing the suburbia of knee-deep fog. The sky was a light gray, covered with heavy clouds that illuminated by the rising sun from behind. The air was fairly cool for summer, and there was almost no wind. The trees lining Kaiser's Street standing nearly still. In an instant later, a sharp pain shot up from his body from his knee. Darcy blinked and realized he was on the ground. He had tripped and hit his knee on the cement. But it did not bother him. What frightened him was that he had lost his grip on his baton. Darcy sat up and anxiously scanned the area, then looked down below him to find it resting under his leg. He got up in a hurry and retrieved his precious tool, inspecting it for any signs of damage. Once he was certain it was still intact, he sighed in relief and chuckled, rubbing his knee. The pain reminded him of Lucy, the mutt that had bit him once as he was fixing Miss Murphy's system. Also an issue caused by the chewing of the dog at certain cables. Darcy had almost kicked the damn thing, but Murphy showed up to apologize for her widow Lucy baby. Every repair job at that place, which was often, due to the dog repeatedly tearing apart writing, was miserable. He would often try to wear earbuds and listen to his music while he worked, but either the mutt or Murphy herself had always had something to bark about for the entirety of the job. How the hell do you accrue through enough wealth to live here, and yet you don't have the brains to discipline your dog or yourself? The answer to that question was always elude Darcy. Eventually, he stopped asking. Kaiser Avenue was the richer side of town. It was the part of the subdivision filled with beautiful houses for the upper middle class, with lush and well-tended green lawns to hold barbecues on, and the pools. Ah, yes. Everyone loved their pools. One time, when Darcy had to repair a unit that was going off every time the dog ran by it, the Grant kids had splashed him while his back was turned. He laughed it off at first, but when they began throwing pool toys at him, he took it more seriously. Miss Grant came out and yelled as well when he tried to approach the kids, then told him to leave without finishing the repair. His boss wasn't too happy about that one either. None of that mattered now. That was the past and this was the present, and the world was quiet here. Just how he liked it. A bird chirped and fluttered above Darcy. He watched it go, making its way towards a nest down the avenue in another tree. One of the few sounds Darcy could stand. This was the most beautiful. Oh, how much it must have been felt to be free, and to have a voice that sung so sweetly. He took the baton in his hand and waved it in the air, synchronizing it with the voice of his avian friend, until he had convinced himself that he was the one orchestrating the song. Tracy, the eldest daughter of Munroses, had always had a great singing voice. Darcy always loved looking forward to any job at Munroses because she was constantly practicing. Not only that, but Tracy enjoyed his company, and they would speak in soft voices at great lengths, mostly about music and singing. Although he was generally very negative about most things outside of that realm, should be the topic arise. She didn't seem to mind. Out of everyone in his gluttonous, hubris-ridden lane, Tracy was the only one that Darcy didn't have to tolerate. He embraced her company and she his. Mr. Munro, oh, however, certainly did. The chunky old fuck, pushing his to his 60s at this point, would always interrupt his deep, blurry shouting and make Darcy finish the repair immediately. With the prompt of slamming of the front door on his way out, Darcy could easily recall the day he first installed the system into their house. He had been out back laying down scissors when Mr. Munro came over and just started watching him, crunching on an apple as he hoovered over Darcy for the rest of the installation. At one point, Darcy had politely asked him to back up a bit so he wouldn't hit Mr. Munro with a pole, to which he responded, "Oh, now you're gonna threaten to hit me? Have a problem with me making sure I'm getting my money's worth? Well, maybe you can get the fuck out, and I'll have someone more competent to do the job." Darcy remembered blood dripping from his hand that day. His fingernails bore further into his palm as he clenched his fist, just barely holding back from knocking the old fart on his ass and smashing his head into jam. Instead, he nodded and apologized with a quiet voice and returned to his work. Each and every day, this was his job, going door to door on Kaiser Avenue, checking out the repair installation requests for the Harris Security System Company. And at every house, there were a pair of cranky geezers with some kind of internal grip against youth, save their own overly spoiled children, who were usually the ones responsible for breaking the system in the first place. And after putting up with people's shit, he had come home to the bitch. Donna had always had something to pity complain about from her job and at the local cafe. There was this one guy who didn't even tip me, even after I made it clear that you were supposed to do. Like, sorry, asshole. But every time Darcy would try and softly speak about his grievances, she would never even consider hearing about Darcy's day. She either just would cut him off with her own stories or say she was late for some bullshit and leave the apartment. A boiling with anger started within Darcy, but he tried with all of his might to contain it. Standing there in the middle of the street, he gritted his teeth and closed his eyes. But the memories flooded to him anyways. Donna's birthday was last night when she had came in to ask him for her gift. Darcy blankly pulled out a metal tube of sorts. "What the fuck is this, some kind of weird toy? Is this seriously what you got me?" Donna made a disgusted face, the one he'd grown to see too often. Darcy took the tool back. "No," he replied, reaching for his back, gripping his baton. He spun the tube into it and simply replied, "This is enough." He hated this woman, so he conducted a fine piece for her. Something suit of Beethoven. Deep in the drumming was the breakup, bellowing from the bottom of his heart. One final song before she left. After they had part ways that night, Darcy began to pack his bag, his baton, some sheet music, and his laptop for work stuff. Darcy had been thinking about this for weeks, no more than a few months. This was years in the making. Ever since he was a child, he had always wished to conduct a massive symphony, but this was his chance. He reached the avenue about 4:30 in the morning, though everyone on the avenue owned a Harris security system, and the people there weren't of enough importance to hire wandering security, save for that shit for Bel Air. He entered onto the street and parked his van and reached for his laptop. After logging a repair job, he deactivated all of the systems on Kaiser Street Avenue. It's time for the show. He began at the Richardsons, entering around the back through sliding door. He started his way upstairs, moving slowly as to not cause a creak in the floorboards. His sheet music led him up, up, up into the children's room. The best kind of music starts at piano, he thought. The door was open just a tad, enough for him to open some more, and begin the song. After a couple of notes, there were sounds of movement in the house. The audience had begun to stir, moving from room to room. Darcy graced the residence with his music, but quickly lost their attention and their cheers disappeared. Frowning, Darcy decided to find a new audience. Next door was Murphy. Someone who's sophistical of educated of her must have an appreciation for good music. Entering the front door, one of the drummers started going by her own beat. Darcy scanned his orchestra and found the rogue. Then he quickly signaled for the rest of the players to show her how music is truly played. Patting Lucy's hair, Darcy looked up to Murphy watching him play. He smiled and gave her a short solo segment. Darcy continued through the neighborhood, his sympathy ringing through each household, but each time his audience grew more too bored too quickly and went back to sleep. Eventually he reached the Munros. Darcy wiped his brow as he had saved the best for last. Tracy in her room, he gestured a single violinist to hold a single note as long as they could. He nodded and did so, dragging the bow over the string with the greatest of care. Crash! The clash of cymbals erupted from behind Darcy, bringing the orchestra into a fortissimo. He then turned to find Tracy's father standing there, his own baton in hand, trying to take the stage. Enraged, Darcy attacked Mr. Munro. No, no, this is my song, he screamed, taking his baton and smashing Munro in the nose with the handle. A ribbon of crimson flowed down around them as Darcy continued hitting Munro, the metal butt crashing the skull, but the sympathy of having fallen silent by this point, save for one pianist, hitting the deepest note he could, over and over and over again. Munro coughed. The more blood splattered onto the floor of the concert hall. Darcy's eyes flamed in rage. He took the violinist's bow and jammed it into the fat man's gut, more ribbon spilling from his innards. The pianist fell silent, and the only sound that remained was that of the squishing flesh being penetrated by Darcy's blade. Once he was satisfied, Darcy stood up and looked around upon his work. He turned his head and looked towards his darling Tracy, her white bed sheets coated in spray of blood that continued to leak from her beautiful neck, wiping a tear away. He approached her and closed her panic-stricken eyes, then combed her hair through his fingers. I'm sorry. I'll never forget myself for destroying such a beautiful voice. With the sympathy concluded, Darcy Turner walked outside. A light fog had rolled in, and he looked at the silenced lens point 22 in his hand. He closed his eyes. The neighborhood was quiet. There were no screaming children, no angry seniors, no barking bitches, just a blissful silence to complement the conclusion of the masterpiece. And who knows, perhaps someone out there is calling for an encore. He chuckled to himself at the thought. They would have to wait for now. It was time to relax and bask in the quiet new world he had created. After all, Darcy Turner loves silence.
What's up, my pretties? It's the Lion Queen here. I want to appreciate you all for tuning into this video, and I do appreciate you guys supporting my video by giving this video likes and stuff. If you really enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like, comment and subscribe if you're new, ring the bell for notifications to when I upload so that way you guys will get updated for whenever I upload. If you want to follow me on Twitter or DeviantArt, feel free to leave a follow on those if you are interested in following me on those socials. If you want to support my backup channel, known as Ms. Dark Shigo, feel free to subscribe to it, as a link to that will also be in the About page section. And with that being said, and that being the case, thank you so much for watching, my pretties, and as always, stay pretty.